No. Yeah.
Good evening, guys. My name is Lars Stender. I'm a writer from Denmark who specializes in science fiction and fantasy stories. Tonight I'm here to read from my fantasy book, Mandigo and Hellhounds, one of my earlier books about a young apprentice, the wizard's apprentice, who grows up believing he is quite another person than what he really is. If you want to see more information about me as a writer and my books, please go to the link at the bottom of the Twitch.
Exactly.
Okay, guys. Chapter 17 from Mandigo and the Hellhounds. After breakfast, the household steward Parso went over to Mandigo and told him to come with him. They climbed the stairs to Matero's great library, where Parso told Mandigo to wait. Mandigo looked at his surroundings in awe. Never in his life had he seen so many books and scrolls. They stood in shelves along the walls or lay in stacks on a couple of big tables in the rectangular room. Mandigo went over to one of the tables and carefully opened a thick book that was lying there. It was filled with strange-looking letters that he didn't recognize, and each page was decorated with colorful drawings of unusual plants and herbs and fanciful animals. Next to it lay another book that was considerably smaller and which had a red, withering cover. A bookmark had been placed in it, and Mandigo couldn't help himself. He opened the book to where the bookmark was. The book was written in an ancient language that Greta had taught him a little of. She had called the language Anglic, and she had told him that it had once been spoken by a great number of people. But just like so many other things, Anglic had not been in use and therefore forgotten after the storm. The bookmark had been placed next to an article describing a strange apparatus that Mandigo had never heard of. From what he could gather, according to the article, the apparatus would make it possible for people to communicate with one another across far distances. A couple of lines followed in which there were a number of symbols and numbers. Mandigo couldn't make heads nor tails of it. His head ached just from looking at them. So he decided to close the book and look around the library instead. The bookshelves reached from the floor to the top of the vaulted ceiling, and there were several ladders to help one get to the top. There were only two places where there were no bookshelves. One of the places was the south wall, where there were three big leaded windows, through which a considerable amount of light could reach straight down and shine directly on a big writing table and a reading desk below it. The other spot, the lax shelves, was above the fireplace, in the long wall of the library to the west. Instead, there hung a tapestry. The tapestry awakened Mandigo's curiosity, and he went over to examine it closer. The motive was, at first glance, fairly simple, although lavishly executed. It portrayed three people, two men and a woman, woven in a background of forest and mountains. The three people were standing beneath an old oak tree. That is, the two men were standing under the oak, fairly close to each other, while the woman seemed to stay at a distance on the other side of the tree trunk. Mandigo stepped even closer. The more he looked at the tapestry, the more he noticed certain details that were small and strange. The man on the far right in the scene was dressed in black, and there was something very familiar about him. Mandigo gasped. He was sure that the man was supposed to resemble Matero, his uncle. The other man wore a red doublet and blue trousers, while the woman wore a beautiful white and silver grey dress. Mandigo didn't know who the man in red or the woman in could be, but he had a strange feeling that he somehow already knew them. The man in red seemed to be staring right down at him, and in some strange way, whoever had woven the tapestry had managed to give the man an expression of immense sadness in his eyes. Mandigo blinked and looked over at the woman. She also seemed to follow him with her eyes, no matter where he stood. It was quite unpleasant. She had long blonde hair, and her dress was so finely depicted you could almost sense how her skirt slowly fluttered in the wind. Mandigo took a few steps back, overwhelmed by the intensity of the figures in the tapestry. They seemed to be speaking to him, practically yelling at him, but he just couldn't decipher their words. But he knew that whatever the three figures were trying to tell him, it was of utmost importance. The next moment the door to the library was opened and the Mortero entered. He glanced from Mandigo up at the tapestry and back again. "Oh, do you like the tapestry?" he asked, without further introduction. Mandigo swallowed, tried to make his voice as neutral as possible. "Yes, it's very beautiful. I've never seen anything like it before." Mortero nodded solemnly. "No, I can imagine. Your training up until now has been somewhat insufficient. But that's all going to change, I promise you. Here at Bloodstone you will receive both a broad and invaluable education. In the next few years you will not only become a great wizard, but you will also be refined enough to be accepted at any royal court." Mortero walked over and sat down at his writing table below the windows of the south wall. He leaned back as he studied Mandigo thoughtfully across the table. Mandigo slowly came closer. His mind was filled with questions, but he wasn't sure which ones to ask and which ones were best kept to himself. Mortero scared him. This was the man who controls the Sherlocks, who had attempted to kidnap Bellatrix. Why? And why did Mortero use Dracoids as soldiers, instead of just regular ones, humans? And why did he have such an interest in Mandigo? Is that why I am here? Mandigo decided to ask as his first question. So you can turn me into a wizard? Mortero lifted his eyebrows in feigned surprise. Isn't that what you want? You have the gift? Mandigo nodded slowly. Yes, that's what Greta said too. Oh, Greta. She keeps coming up, doesn't she? But you said you knew her because she is a skilled sorceress. Yes, and? Mandigo decided to answer with an entirely new question. I also heard you say that you had persuaded my father, my foster father, to take me in, and that you would come get me on my 12th birthday. Why? Who are my real parents? Are you my real father? Mortero's beard rippled into a broad smile. He seemed to be enjoying Mandigo's confusion at his expense, but then he suddenly became very serious. He leaned forward in the chair, folded his hand on the table before him, and looked at Mandigo with a sorrowful expression. No, Mandigo. As much as I wish I was, I am not your father. I am your uncle.
So, there is a couple of questions in my mind, and I hope you people would like to consider coming with some questions as well. Like, okay, 17, it's over now. What happened here? First of all, because of all the other chapters I've heard, I start to think that could be Greta on the picture, but in a young age, so he couldn't really recognize her. That's my opinion about this tapestry. Following the eyes is probably because it is somehow connected to some powers.
That is definitely one reason, but also some of the reason is a special technique used in artwork.
Oh yeah,
and
we noticed that already.
Yes, and so, but we are dealing with some kind of magic here, so we could safely assume that it's a mixture of the two.
It could be, yeah. Okay. So the other thing here is that his uncle, which is probably from his father's side, could be. Our uncle is also married into, so that could also be. He even first find it funny because he likes to have certain power over others. My feeling about that. And also in that way, he at the same point find it sad that his side of the family seems to have been gone. Which also could lead to the tapestry, like it could be somebody he was familiar with at that point. So it could maybe not be Greta. It could also be him and Greta was together. Many questions out there that could end up in some fun things.
What we have to remember also from one of the earlier chapters, when mandigo spent his first night at Bloodstone, he is visited by this ghost.
Yeah.
Who tells them to look out for the tapestry in the library.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Mandigo's senses are on higher alert here. He really is trying to make sense of all that's happening around him.
Yeah, because there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
So from this 17 and forward, there's definitely coming some new information we need to come closer to the conclusion.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe we just go on and take the next chapter.
Then first we need to conclude this one with stopping the record.